All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to break down one of the most incredible, most visually stunning events in the entire Hebrew Bible. We're talking about the prophet Elijah's last day on earth and the dramatic handover to his successor, Elisha. And this isn't just about an ending. It's really this powerful story about loyalty, succession, and where true authority comes from.
So right out of the gate, verse 1 sets the stage for something massive. The key phrase here is when the Lord would take up Elijah. This tells us right away this is a divinely scheduled event. This isn't an accident. And that word whirlwind, oh, that's a huge clue. In the Bible, a whirlwind is often a sign of a theophany, a moment where God's raw power and presence are made visible. So buckle up.
Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, we need a little context, right? We're talking about the 9th century BC. This was a really chaotic time for Israel, which was a divided kingdom. Elijah's entire career was defined by this intense clash between the worship of God and the worship of the pagan god Baal. So his departure, it's a huge turning point. Our story kind of breaks down into a few parts. The first part kicks off with Elijah and Elisha setting out on a journey. And this isn't just any road trip. It's physical for sure, but every single stop is loaded with symbolic meaning, starting with a place that's just steeped in Israel's history. So where do they start? Gilgal. And believe me, this location is no accident. This is the very spot where Israel made its first camp after crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land. It's a place of new beginnings, of promises fulfilled. How perfect is that for the start of a journey that's about to launch a whole new era of prophecy through Elisha? Okay, so this brings us to the next stage of their journey, and this is where things get really interesting. You could almost see this as a series of tests for Elisha. This isn't just a casual walk. Elijah is about to test his apprentice's loyalty, and each test happens at a place with its own deep, profound meaning. Their first stop is Bethel. Now, the name literally means house of God. Sounds pretty good, right? It's famous for being the place where Jacob had his vision of a ladder reaching to heaven. But, by this point in time, its reputation had soured, to say the least. And here it is in verse 2, the first test. Elijah basically says, hey, you can just wait here for me. But look at Elisha's response. He gives this powerful binding oath, as the Lord liveth and as thy soul liveth. This isn't just him being stubborn. This is a formal covenant promise. He's saying, I'm with you to the end. He will not be shaken off. So you got to understand, Bethel was a real problem spot. It had become this hub for idol worship, with one of the infamous golden calves. It represented the exact spiritual rot Elijah had been fighting his whole life. And it's here we meet the sons of the prophets. Think of them as a school for prophets in training. And guess what? They already know Elijah's leaving. The word is out. All right, next stop, Jericho. Now, everyone knows the story of Jericho, right? The city where the walls came tumbling down for Joshua. So it's this place that's loaded with meaning. It represents God's powerful judgment, but also the human attempt to rebuild and restore. And what happens at Jericho in verse 4? It's like deja vu all over again. Elijah repeats the test, you can stay here. And Elisha's answer? Bam! Word for word, the exact same oath. This repetition is so important. It's showing us just how rock solid, how absolutely unwavering Elisha's commitment really is. Okay, the final destination before the main event, the Jordan River. And in the story of Israel, the Jordan isn't just a river. It's a massive symbolic line in the sand. It's the border between wandering in the wilderness and entering the Promised Land. It's the dividing line between the old and the new. So here we are at the edge of the river, and this is where everything shifts. We're about to see a miracle that's going to sound really familiar, and then a request that is going to define the entire future of prophecy in Israel. And check this out. There's this little detail in verse 7. It says 50 other prophets are standing off in the distance just watching. Why? Because this isn't supposed to be some private, secret moment. This is a public event with official witnesses so that everyone knows what's about to happen is legitimate. And then, the miracle. Verse 8. Elijah takes off his cloak, his mantle, which is basically the symbol of his entire prophetic authority, rolls it up, and smacks the water with it. And the Jordan River just parts. It splits in two, and they walk across on dry ground. Can you even imagine seeing that? Now, if that sounds familiar, it should. This is a massive callback. Parting the waters, that puts Elijah in the same league as Moses at the Red Sea and Joshua at this very same river. The message is crystal clear. This prophet operates with the same God-given authority as the guys who founded the nation. Okay, so they get across, and in verse 9, Elijah asks, "So, what can I do for you?" And Elijah's request for a double portion is so often misunderstood. People think he's asking to be twice as powerful as Elijah. But that's not it at all. He's speaking in legal terms. The double portion was the inheritance that went to the firstborn son. He's asking to be named the official, legitimate spiritual heir. Elijah's answer in verse 10 is so telling. He says, "You have asked a hard thing." He's basically saying, look, this isn't mine to give. This is up to God. So he sets a condition, a test. If you actually see me when I am taken away, then you'll know God has approved your request. The final decision is out of his hands. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the climax. This is the spectacular, awe-inspiring moment where Elijah departs and the mantle of prophecy is officially passed on. You have to just try and picture the scene from verse 11. They're just walking along, talking, and then, bam! A chariot made of fire, pulled by horses of fire, just appears out of thin air and drives between them. And then that whirlwind we heard about earlier swoops in, and Elijah is taken up into heaven. It's just mind-blowing. So let's unpack that imagery because it is just packed with meaning. The fire, that's all about God's holiness and untouchable power. The chariot and horses, that's military imagery. It's like God's personal heavenly army has arrived to give his top prophet a royal escort home. This makes Elijah one of only 2 people in the whole Bible who is taken to heaven without actually dying. And it cements his legacy as this larger-than-life figure who people believed would one day return. And then verse 12 tells us Elisha saw it, the condition was met, he gets his request, and his cry, my father, is so personal, so full of emotion. But then he adds, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. He's not just mourning his mentor, he's declaring that Elijah, the prophet of God, was the true spiritual army of the nation. He was their real protection, not the king's soldiers. And in that moment of grief and awe, Elisha tears his own clothes. Now, that's a classic sign of mourning, of course, but there's more to it here. It's a symbolic act. He's tearing away his old self, the life of a student. His apprenticeship is officially over. From now on, he won't be following. It's his turn to pick up the mantle and lead. So this whole incredible story of transition leaves us with this big question, doesn't it? Elisha had to pass every test, he had to remain loyal through it all, and he had to witness the impossible to inherit his master's role. And it really makes you think, what does it truly mean to prove yourself worthy of a legacy? And what does it take to carry that mantle forward?